And now we are inviting our next presenter, next delegate, Volnov Ilya Nikolaevich, candidate of technical sciences, associate professor, director of the Center for Technological Support of Education of Moscow Polytechnic University, Moscow, Russia. Ilya Nikolaevich was born in Moscow, graduated from the Bauman Moscow State Technological University. He is a candidate of technical sciences. He worked as a researcher at the Technical University Mining Academy in Germany. He is a deputy director of science at Moscow State Industrial University and author of more than 65 scientific publications and 4 monographs. Curator of science art exhibition projects, media artist, developer of the author's concept of science art as a technology of thinking. So, Volnov Ilya Nikolaevich, Moscow, Russia. The floor is yours. Degradation and restoration of time in modern science presentation. Dear friends, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a great honor for me to be with you. Let me present my lecture, which will be partially polemic. It will present other points of view, unlike those that have been presented today. And of course, I will found my ideas on Vernadsky's concepts that haven't been mentioned today yet. And this is the question to our delegates: why do not we pay enough attention to Vernadsky's concepts that he himself considered most important? Okay, in the first slide, there are several quotes from this is unveiled with reference to Plato. And here we see that the quote is the universe as a human being is formed of triangles. We're going to talk about these triangles particularly. So why the topic of time has become so important, crucial, and Vernadsky worked a lot with this topic and considered it as a key subject in his research work. First of all, let us consider the crisis of the contemporary civilization, the crisis of globalism as a model of development, which is based on expanding the space model. We are trying to overcome our own crises, our difficulties by finding new resources, basically in space. And when we base, we cannot expand anymore, and we do not have any more territories, we do not have any more resources, we define crisis of globalism and start to change this mechanism of development by intensifying, by finding inner resources. And finally, now we pay attention to time and treat it as the future resource for development. Before this, the main resource used to be space. And in this context, we see the following transformation. When we're talking about the equilibrium between culture, politics, and economics, we find out before we would find out that our problems we try to solve by politics and economics, but in terms of global crisis, they don't work anymore, and we need to refer to culture. We start to understand culture not through space, but through time. The culture is understood as a number of norms, recommendations, and methods of working with time, the possibility to straight the time in different layers. There are concepts of the end of history by Fukuyama, the technological singularity, that we know, and today we are going to work a little bit with this concept. This is the sign of a crisis of our development, the transition from expansive space-based development to intensive time-based and inner resources development. And what was the most significant and key point and the most alarming sign of the crisis is the development of artificial intelligence, different programs creating strong artificial intelligence systems. In my estimation, will be quite different to that was expressed here before. And I'll try to explain it well. So, what is artificial intelligence? Now, I understand it is part or add-on of a big data. What is big data? Big data is always past. We're not talking about artificial intelligence or intellect. We understand time as continuous, but not present continuous, but past continuous. In this model, there is no future. And together, we are trying to constitute the degradation of time. We do not see the future in time. We are focused on the past, dear friends. Yet, let me try to repeat. Artificial intelligence, it is always about the past. And we need to remember this. The next point, the concept of Fukuyama, it is similar to scientific singularity. And here, what happens? The same degradation of time, and the future again collapses. We consider that, we believe that we have found a certain number of technologies and we start to develop them. We introduce them in an autocatalyptical mood and we go to the vertical progress mode. Those spheres that we've mentioned today, they start to develop, to get, let's say, swollen and involve more and more space. But in different the sense space, what does it mean? It means that together we do not have the future with the possibility to change the scenario of our development, because we become the hostages of the decisions made previously. In this model, the future is the continuous present. Again, degradation of time. And the further we go through this scenario, the further we follow this path, the less possibility to change and leave this path we have. We are hostages of history, the hostages of earlier made decisions. The future is not there. The future is continuous present. So how can we leave this vicious circle? It is not possible. If we are talking about our consciousness as intellect, there is no way out. The way out can be only one. Think about our consciousness as two parts, intellect and cognitive parts. Intellect always tends to be down to earth, the earthly, and consciousness, cognitive function always strives up to divine, to the upper, to the higher. So how can we weigh out? Only through consciousness, through thinking, through cognitive function. When we start to get so attached to the earthly matters, then we can keep and go to different time, different future, the future which is not yet organized, and we need to realize ourselves as thinking there. So this situation is omnipresent in science and education, in social systems. They are completely hooked in the intellect, and now we are bringing up our children by developing their intellect, not their thinking ability. So how can we go out? Vernadsky showed the way out, and we're going to talk about it a bit later. Let us go through slides. Next slide, please. So why does it happen? Because this is the concept of an average person, so-called, and today we talked about it. What is an average person? You see, the system of knowledge, we are legitimizing the kind of knowledge which is accessible to an average person. And we reject the knowledge which is not accessible for an average person. It is quite obvious. And here we understand that all geniuses cannot fit into the system. It is not possible there. Okay, so let's move forward. The next very important aspect, the science do not differentiate the great and the small or little knowledge. But this differentiation was made by geniuses, which are not included in the average person concept. And here we see several quotes by Princess Bacon. A little philosophy inclines man's mind to atheism, but depth in philosophy brings us man's minds about religion. Another genius, Heisenberg, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist. Yet, there is a God at the bottom of this glass. Very interesting. Here also we can have a concept based at the consequence of knowledge. And I believe, because I know Mikhailo Lomonosov and Vernadsky's concept of scientific faith. So these two things, an average person that cannot distinguish the great and the small knowledge, brings us to the fact that the science always chooses the little knowledge. And as a consequence, we are always in neglection. We deny everything. And we come to limitations. We see that the contemporary science put the limitations everywhere. The horizon of planning, the statistics, etc. The science limits our knowledge instead of expanding them. Well, let us go to the concept of time. We have touched the point of degradation, and now we have to restore it. So let us refer to the secret doctrine. Today we heard about two aspects of the time, and in the Eastern or Asian tradition, time, Greek tradition, Chronos, Saturn, and at some aspect, Chronos is the god of unlimited cycles. So the first aspect, Chronos, which means limitless or static length of time without beginning, without the end, and outside any space or definitions. It is not possible to think about it with our consciousness. Let's refer to the Greek mythology. So here we find out Kronos, who mutilates his dad, Uranus, and by this part is taken from the whole. Hence, Saturn, the god of the father of gods, was transformed. Those who remember the Greek mythology, children of Uranus, ideas, could not leave their mother's bosom. They were confined there, and in order to enter, Kronos mutilated his father and gave birth to the ideas. The second aspect of time appears, and some details may be added. Looking at the Greek mythology, what happens after? This is some add-on from myself. So we find Kronos, who received a prophecy that one of his sons will take his power, his throne. Kronos, being held by fear, starts to eat his children. Kronos eating his children. This was continued till Zeus was born. And he escaped this, let's say, procedure. Kronos eating his children is cyclic time, cyclos. Sometimes it is referred to the second aspect of time. Let's have a look. What do we have? What do we use? The time in the science is not here. It is a different kind of time. Let's refer to the antique mythology. What happens to Kronos afterwards? So, Zeus, just a brief reminder, escaped this horrible destiny of his brothers and sisters of being eaten by his father, and he grows up and declares a war to his father. Titanomachia, the war of titans and gods, starts when Kronos loses, and thus brings him to Tartar, the reign of the dead. And here, if we imagine the cycle as a number of cyclic and linear time, a cycle is a spiral or loop which has also a movement in it. What does science do? It deconstructs the spiral time. It takes the cyclic and linear parts. The cyclic part is being rejected and only being based on the linear time. The science takes Chronos from Tartar and bases all of the concepts on only this aspect. Okay, and here we start to see more clearly. The science begins to understand time mechanically. Please pay attention to this point, that it is also connected to the Minkowski space, the creation of time space. Now we try to make to kill the time, to deprive it of any attributes. In Minkowski space, the time is not understood as a separate independent entity. It is only understood through space. The time is understood as space and through space. So 2 points of time, 2 momentum of time, behave the same as 2 momentum of space, and they cannot get overlaid. This is the space understanding of time. We are killing time as much as we can. It is clear that this kind of time is not sacral time. And on the next slide, we can remember Newton and what happened when Newton introduced absolute time and space. There was an alternative model of time and space by Descartes that we didn't choose. We picked Newton time. Why? Because in this kind of time and space, it was very easy to describe mechanical movement. Yet in Descartes' time, the vortex theory, there was no this simplicity. So today, now we got mechanical time by Newton as absolute only because it led the description of the inert matter in a more easier way. You can see 3 aspects, 3 triangles with which we started, if you remember. So I draw the triangles and define the aspects of time: Chronos, Cyclos, and Kairos. Another aspect of time that we haven't mentioned yet, that we find in Greek mythology, let's call it the time of the gods. It's the time when we feel the eternity, that we cannot express. It is unexpressible feeling of eternity. There is no past or future. It is an absolute time of eternity. The time of people, the physical time, the time of nature or cosmos, the cyclic time. And another more, let's say, scientific form of this triangle, the science. Well, have a look at it. Physical time, biological time, and ontological or instant time, the different variations of time. Yet you have to remember that there should be harmony between these three forms of time. And I will insist on this. Last year, I was presenting my lecture here, and I said that the symmetry of the triangle may be the criterion for choice of the image of the future. The symmetry shows or points to the vital and natural, or not vital and artificial. When the triangle is not symmetrical, it should be rejected. It cannot survive, and it should not let go in the future. So here we have 3 forms of time. And we are talking more about Vernadsky. I'm going to introduce more Vernadsky points. So the inert matter lives in Tartar. the chronos, it's dead, mechanical, meteorological, physical time, the dead time of mechanical movement. It is linear, homogeneous, unidirectional, and infinite. Then Vernadsky introduces the notion of the living matter and creates the idea of a living substance. It is a key different point. It is principally different time. It's biological time. Time of nature and space. It is time of recurrent events, has a conditional beginning and end. It is heterogeneous. Also, Vernadsky introduced another term as instant time, which we could compare to Kairos, time of the gods. It is not linear, it is continuous, discrete, finite, and immeasurable. This is the time of scripture, spiritual, eschatological time, teleological time, existential time. Let's continue. So here, once again, going back to that triangle and choosing the image of the future. Now we are at the point of bifurcation, as mathematicians call it. It is a global crisis, and in our life with 2-3 generations, we see that different cycles of different time scales overlapped. The changing of technological models, and we saw it during our life. All possible crises got together. It means that reality challenges us to change. It helps us through this kind of events to go to a new kind of future. So you see the strong thesis that is different to the previous scenarios. The scenarios of the future where we see the deformation or degradation of the triangle balances. It is not natural and should be stopped. How it can be joined to the future? Strong artificial intelligence, metahumanism, metaverse type Mark Zuckerberg. What happens there? We take the dead mechanical time and expand to all spheres of human activity. The digital person, dead time.
The digitized person self lives in the dead time. Another point I'd like to make here: what happened 100 years ago when Vernadsky and Einstein proposed their own images of the future? Both of them did a very important thing that was in common. They used Newton time and space, and absolute time and space are those you cannot think of. The absolute time and space were outside of our experience. Einstein and Vernadsky say that time and space can become the subject of the study, and they united. They can unite the forces and study it. Vernadsky and Einstein take different approaches. Einstein is talking about the relativity of time and space. Let's make the philosophical conclusion. In other words, it means that I have my own time. You have your own time, and they are not the same. They don't coincide. Time does not collect the reality of our time. It means that we cannot compare the time of each other. This is the basis of postmodernism in which we are living. It has deconstructed our reality. This is the beginning of postmodernism. But Vernadsky says just the opposite. He creates the concept, the study about the living substance. He announces everything alive. The cosmos is alive, and everything that is alive lives in the live biological time. The live biological time synchronizes everything within itself. It's the time that collects the cosmos, but not decomposes it, and makes it fall into many parts. We often ignore it. ignore this idea, and it sounds strange to me. We can say that 100 years ago, these concepts were created and the humanity was going through another important point in history. It's the attitude towards time. It's the deification of the living and the dead. And that's how we came to postmodernism, the crisis of everything. The ideas of Vernadsky were the beginning of postmodernism. And I think that right now we have the chance, due to the global crisis, to get back to the ideas of Vernadsky and get back to the right path, and to change the reality, and to change ourselves. Let's move on. In these 2 pages, you can see the ways of thinking of Vernadsky in terms of the biological time. I'm not going into detail, but I'd like to highlight Vernadsky has built the approach. He showed how he was looking at the biological time, and he showed the main differences of the mechanical time from the living time, biological time. It is impossible to identify the momentous time. In a particular moment of time, a measured object does not change its mass. And Vernadsky says that in terms of the living substance, it's impossible. Why? The living substance is always changing. There's no point in time when there's no change in the mass of the living substance. And only that tells us that the whole apparatus of differential and integral calculations that are the basis for physics cannot be true here. We're still working the biological on these biological formulas, but we don't understand that they don't work. Also, I'd like to highlight that Vernadsky says the biological time is born within the living material, the living substance. It's not something external in terms of the living substance. The movement of the living substance as multiplication depends on the time that is created by the living substance. The living substance reproduces itself. It reproduces the time, the space, its multiplication. This is the main point. We are the living substance, and we produce, we generate this living time. And we often talk about noosphere, but we rarely talk about the concept of living substance. And the next step that Vernadsky took, he talked about the contemporary times, the momentous time. These times are born within our mind. The momentous time is born within our mind. And this is the scientific basis to the phrase that the time is the result of the work of the mind. Well, the presentation will be available. There are more interesting points here. Let's see. In terms of the development of the civilization, what state are we in? We are in an artificial state. And I'm not talking about all levels of being. Let's use the following terms. It's the physical layer of our existence, the vital layer, and the mental layer. Each of them exist in their own times. Physical, it's the mechanical time. Vital, it's the biological time by Vernadsky. And the mental is the momentous time, or the kairos, the Greek kairos. Where are we going to with this digital transformation? The physical, the dead time, is becoming the absolute. Through that, we are describing the vital and the mental times, but this description is impossible. We are destroying our vital, our mental nature when we are trying to describe ourselves through the physical, the mechanical time. The harmonious human being is the one who can harmoniously unite all these three times through the symmetrical triangle talked about recently. We're not denying the mechanical time, that it should exist in certain limitations. It shouldn't spread to the area where it shouldn't be. So let's move on. Unfortunately, we are moving towards the meta-universe. We're creating the artificial intelligence. And it seems like we cannot change anything. So brachistochrone curve, that is what we can see here. What is it? We're moving towards a particular target, objective. But in order to get there faster, we need to dive under the horizon. We're developing the meta-universe, the technosphere, by artificial intelligence. We are diving under the horizon by doing so. It's something that is not normal. We can either fall or we can just achieve the target faster. So let's talk about these scenarios. We should either stop them or we should use them to speed the movement up. What shall we do? We have this question today, voiced earlier. I believe we should focus on the practices, our practices of the institutionalized organizations that have their own times of existence. First of all, it's art. And that's why we can see pictures of art here. Artists live in their own time. They don't live in the mechanical types of time. They live in two different times. And when we're talking about art, when we're giving more weight to it in the contemporary life, it's important. The philosophy of art was reduced to philosophy of science and philosophy of history. Post-positivism tried to destroy philosophy by doing that. And also, in terms of art, there have been many attempts to create the philosophy of art. Art is being destroyed. So we need to revive art to resume its high level of importance, its status. We need to resume the to give the high status to the artist back. We can see the degradation of art. There is no kairos there. There is no cyclical time there. We need to add more art, and through art, we can build these triangles back. We can fix them. Page. So once again, we can see the triangle that shows the contemporary state of technology, science, and art. This is the constructive scheme. The triangles enable us to draw conclusions. On the sides of the triangle, there's always something else. Since 80s, the techno-science has been developing. The science serves the technology. Also have the science art. It was created due to the misunderstanding. Art is a means of expression, and they use technology for that. It sounds really strange. But what is on the other side? There's nothing on the border of art and science. So we need finally to come up with something. That's the gap that we need to fill in with something. We need to feel this attraction between art and science. Science should become art. We have all the necessary foundations there. Non-beautiful planes cannot fly. The leading constructor, engineer, should be brave to implement his ideas. Non-beautiful science, unbeautiful science won't work. So we need to fly. We need beautiful wings. And I'd like to read you the quote. The truth is not given to a person as a consistent deduction from a certain amount of scientific reasoning. It comes from an extra-logical way. Truth is not taught. It is experienced by the whole being, with the whole soul, with all the torment of personal life. And it's very sad when we can see there was a report by Great Corporations, the American organization, the ideologists of the main events that are happening around us. The digital scenario of transformation leads to catastrophe, and they understand it. And they are offering different scenarios of development. And for them, it's no politics. But we haven't started looking at those ideas yet. Vernadsky has prepared everything for us. He has created everything for us. We don't need to create anything else, anything new. So that is what I'd like to end my report with. Mr. Volnov, thank you very much. We thank you for the ideas you've expressed and for the work you've conducted. This analysis, this study, tells us about the responsibility, the technological singularity concept, the technological development concept is becoming uncontrollable, and intellectual boost, the burst that you mentioned, it will be reflected faster, it will be manifested faster. But if we look at a human being, not as a consciousness, but ways of development of consciousness, and Agni Yoga takes the thinking ability of human beings. It's the combination of heart and brain. It's the intellect that gets back to the heart energy. We hope that these pieces of knowledge will continue being in demand and will be studied seriously, fundamentally by science, and then, only then, we'll achieve this beauty. Thank you so much for this intellectual beauty of the material you presented about this space and time. And we'll continue this dialogue at our scientific symposium, at the round tables that are dedicated to this topic. Thank you so much. Mr. Volnov, the city of Moscow.